Welcome to the Calder Farmstead, your place for news, analysis, and shenanigans from the American Hockey League.
Face off one by Condor, Jones, top, another point fence into the slot, a shot is gone! Josh Perry, in double,
left point, long drive, save, Kinetic, what a stop by Matisse with the left pad! Oh, there was a scramble in front of the net, denied was Matt Schicker by a miraculous piece of net binding by Matisse Kinetic.
D-laner from the red line sends it in, Hofer into his net, he stops it, Hofer looking, Hofer firing toward the empty net, he scores! Are you kidding me? Joel Hofer, a goalie goal in the Calder Cup playoffs!
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out. Right side with Fair. Brooks Light cutting to the net. Fair and let's go! He scored! He scored! It's over!
Hello from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
And Chicago, Illinois.
Welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, episode number 135 for Friday, April 14th, 2023. If you're hoping for a podcast featuring a guide on how to handle basic farming injuries, we are not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast. My name is Sean O'Brien from StatsTrack and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy.
And I'm Sarah Avampato from Full Press Hockey and SB Nation's Canes Country.
As always, we thank you for tuning in with us. And if you're new to hearing Sarah and I talk about hockey, we're going to go over some news and notes around the AHL, as well as dive in and discuss the goings-on of 8 teams around the league. We both watch a lot of AHL games. We're going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you may want to head over to our YouTube feed or podcast feed, wherever you're listening to us from, and check out episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries or Royal Road, go check that out. So you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes. And let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes trying to buy tickets for Fire Festival 2. At this point, it's your own fault. I don't feel bad. You'll never get that time or money back. So next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey? Sarah, we do have at least one little piece of league-wide news here of note. Elliot Friedman back at it, just dropping little breadcrumbs in our lives and then, flying back to NHL land. Said that the NHL sent out like a memo or a notice, some documents, basically like saying that they are strongly in support of keeping AHL President Scott Howson in his place. He currently does not have a new contract with the league, and there have been rumblings from Friedman and Darren Dredger and a couple others basically saying that there was a handful of independent teams who were looking to move on from Scott Howson and not renew his contract. And this is the second time that this has kind of come up. It seemed like it died out pretty quickly. But the fact that the NHL is doing this leads me to believe one of two things. Number one, that the NHL is just doing due diligence and providing an abundance of caution, or that this is starting to become more legitimate than we thought. Our kind of working theory and what it seemed like based on all of the reports that you and I both read was that like this was kind of just someone being petty and, whatever. And there were some reasons for it, some we speculated on, but like this didn't seem like it was going anywhere. And this is starting to feel less and less like a nothing story that's just, some hand wringing from some grumpy, owners and GMs in AHL front offices. Like, I'm not sure now. Like, am I supposed to start to be getting concerned? Because I feel like if we get to August and Scott Howson is replaced as the AHL president and CEO and grand poobah, that like we'll look back at this moment and be like, yeah, we really shouldn't have been screwing around while doing this. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's so like on my scale of like NHL insiders, Darren Dredger's like for whatever, like he's not at the top of my scale of insiders. And so it's like when it was just coming from him, yeah, it was sort of easy to dismiss as, this is someone who has his ear trying to get their angle out into the public and whatever. And it was easy to sort of dismiss it as, a couple people with an axe to grind for whatever reason. But like, Elliot Friedman, I put a little higher up. I mean, they're all this, like, if you're an insider, that is your job, is you get the information from people with an axe to grind and you find a way to get it out there into the world. But like, I put him a little higher up, which makes me take a little bit more seriously. He usually isn't a guy who's frivolously reporting on things. Usually what he says, there's two sides to every story, but what he's reporting usually ends up having some nugget of truth, or more seriousness to it than some of these other insiders. So yeah, like it is the clock is ticking now of what is happening. Why doesn't he have a new contract yet? Are we being dismissive of this when it could actually be, like, blow up in all of our faces this summer?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm starting to at least feel a little more serious about it. Like, not so much so that I won't be glib and make jokes.
That's what we're here
that
for.
will forever be me. But like that, this is maybe a little more of a serious topic, but it's also one that, like, we just keep getting these little bitty nuggets from, NHL insiders. And it's actually really annoying that we have to wait for, the NHL bigwig guys, your Friedmans, your Dredgers, your Frank Saravellis, to drop us some little AHL nuggets and then, fly away back to NHL land. Like, I understand the AHL doesn't have insiders. We barely have, beat writers in every city who are reliable in this dumb league. But like, it seems like people know stuff, or at least should know stuff here. And there should be people out there who can, they can tell it to at the AHL level. And it's just like, yeah, we're not doing that. And I don't like that aspect of this league where it's like, they could just kind of close themselves off to about conversations like this, when it's like, no, media should be in here reporting this. This is pertinent news. If there is basically a mutiny happening amongst AHL teams, like, that's report worthy.
Right. That's big news.
Yeah. Like, the fact that we can't get anything about that, I don't like. I am not a journalist or a beat writer. I'm an analyst. I tell you why the things happened on the ice and occasionally make jokes. That's about it. Sarah, you're a beat reporter for Chicago and Ontario, but like, those two teams, as we've talked, I mean, Ontario's definitely not involved. Chicago seems to be taking like, we're not involved, but we are not involved. Right.
We're not like driving it, because Wendell Young is many things, but I feel like if he were behind this, like, I think we'd know. Like, he's not a particularly cagey person.
No.
He for better or worse kind of, he blasted an email to every agent on the planet being like, we're doing what we want next season. So I think if he had a problem with Scott Howson, we would have heard different from him, in that conversation that, Cece talked about with us last week. Like they're teams that they exist. And I don't think that they're the ones causing this, but yeah, I would love to know where this is coming from, but because we don't have the types of reporters in this league who get that information, we're just going to have to guess.
I don't know. This would be a great time for someone in the, Providence, Hershey, Grand Rapids area to trade in some of those free drink tokens. Just throwing it out there. But again, like I said, I don't know. Do people still do that? Like hey, let's go buy the like PR intern as many beers as they will let us, and be like, hey, so tell me
what's up.
Like, I have no idea, but that's why I'm not a journalist. But we have other things to do. Let's do of 8 teams around the AHL to talk about and the goings on of them. Some of them, unfortunately, we will be chatting about for the last time, as their season will be over by the time our next episode hits, and they aren't making the playoffs. But as always, we will go Atlantic to Pacific. Sarah, where are we going first?
We are starting with the Springfield Thunderbirds, who have had quite a season this year. If you look at their standings projections over time, the graph on Sean's Tableau page, you can see some really dark times from this team around mid-November to January. That is, of course, when Tommy Cross got hurt, followed by Nathan Todd. Alex Jandrov got called up, and so did Will Bitton. So there was a skeleton crew on quite a few cold nights up in Springfield. That is on top of the fact that guys the Thunderbirds were probably counting on were also out of town. Guys like Tropichenko, Matthew Pika, Brady Lyle, all have missed time this season. So how on earth has Springfield managed to not just avoid falling off the map, but be in a position to potentially finish third in a heavily competitive Atlantic division?
Well, actually, Sarah, it's pretty simple. It's 2 words. Joel Hofer. It could probably be Joel bleeping Hofer, but Joel Hofer will do. I don't need to make work for Cece. But as usual, you're right about it being dark times in Springfield there. Guess how many games this season Springfield has had Tommy Cross, Alexandrov, Neighbors, Todd, Bitton, Firk, and Highmore all in the lineup. Like 7 of their pretty important guys. How many games do you think they all shared a bench?
Because this is the AHL, and because I know this is a league that just loves mess, I have to say that they were not at any point in time all on the same bench.
Correct. 0 times that they're pretty that's not all 7 of their best players, but the guys you would have expected to at least at some point have their paths cross in Springfield. Nope, never, not happened. Hofer knew that if this team was going to win in those moments when, as you said, guys were hurt, guys were called up, it was going to be by and large on him to do so. And that's not some small burden to carry either. Any goalie can, will their team to victory on any given night. But to come in basically for months and have to, with the mindset of if I'm not great tonight, we will lose. That's tough. Not everyone's shoulders are broad enough to carry that, plain and simple. But from November 16th to the end of January, the T-Birds played 29 games. Hofer started 19 of them. The T-Birds won 10 of his 19 starts, which isn't great. But when you're considering, the team that was in front of him and available to him, that's treading water, and that is more than enough. He posted a .914 save percentage across those 19 starts, which also pretty decent. 914's well above league average. You are stopping more pucks than your average goalie. And those games, though, they were not pretty ones. A lot of 2-1, 2-0, 3-2 in overtime kind of games. And that kind of proves my point that Hofer, should he have let in an easy one in those games, that was the difference between winning and losing for Springfield that night. Springfield has played the 7th most 1-goal games in the AHL this season with 34. And a lot of them are in that November to January stretch. And Joel Hofer didn't win them all, obviously. But without him keeping the T-Birds afloat, they quite simply are not in the place that they are in the standings right now. They do not have the opportunity to finish third, to get home ice advantage for a good chunk of the postseason. Without Joel Hofer, there's a very good chance that Springfield would be on the outside of the playoffs looking in, because Hartford is in 6th place right now, and they're 3, 4, 5 points out of that, just kind of cropping up in the middle of the Atlantic. Those ugly 2-1 overtime wins from Hofer in December. Those are what's put them in this spot. And Hofer is 100% the Blues goalie of the future, and that makes complete sense. He's always had the skill set that stood up and screamed future NHL goalie. He tracks the puck at a high level. His movement is technical and sound, doesn't have a lot of extraneous parts. He finds his angles and marks quickly. He's not the most explosive athlete, but at 6'5", you don't care. He doesn't have to be. And he's also one of the better puck-playing goalies out there too, which adds a big element to his game that other goalies just don't have. And as a goalie of the future, that future can come real quick if the Blues can find a buyer for Jordan Binnington. I'm assuming that buyer is an NHL team and not a psychiatric unit, but both are possible. Until then, Springfield fans, enjoy him while you got him, because he is the future, and that future could come soon. He's definitely not going to be in Springfield forever.
All right, so let's wrap up looking at Springfield with the standard playoff team question. They are locked into a playoff spot, and now they're just fighting for seeding. Do you see them making a deep run this year?
I can say two things with absolute certainty. Number one, The Wire is the greatest TV show of all time. Number two, the Atlantic Division playoffs this season are going to be a metaphorical knife fight in a phone booth. Every team in the every playoff team in the Atlantic is legitimate. All of them. You could set a time traveler from June right now, have them just appear, middle of our show, and I'd ask which team in the Atlantic won the division and wins the Eastern Conference Finals, and whatever answer they gave me, be like, no, that checks out. Like that could definitely happen. That's not unrealistic. But that being said, like scariness is a relative term. And there are two teams in the Atlantic that scare me more than the rest if I were an Atlantic playoff team. The first is Hartford. That team is clicking right now. And while that fan base isn't massive, it is one of the most dedicated in the AHL. And they are aching to host a playoff game in what I'm sure will be one of the most hostile atmospheres possible. The other is Springfield. We just detailed how nasty Joel Hofer is. The Scott Perunovich Pain Tour has started selling tickets again. Martin Firk looks like Martin Firk again. He very quietly is 6th in the AHL in goals. And I feel like just went from having like 10 on the season to 30 overnight. Mm-hmm. Pekka, Highmore, McGing, etc. All of them are available to Springfield. And I'm pretty sure almost all of them are in Springfield right now. I think the Blues just did like a batch of call up, play a game, go homes. Mm-hmm. So I'm not totally sure if everyone is currently there, but clearly the plan is to put them in Springfield because St. Louis ain't making the playoffs. There was a Reddit thread actually in r/AHL the other day asking for playoff predictions. And I responded with who I thought were going to be the last 4 teams standing. And this is just kind of like an off the cuff, maybe 2-3 minutes of thought. When we do our playoff preview, next episode, those will be my official, Calder Farmstead picks. But I said I picked 4 teams, basically 1 for each division. And I said Springfield went to the Eastern Conference Finals to play Syracuse. And I don't regret that. I'll say this. Whoever makes it out of the Atlantic, they're going to the Calder Cup Finals. The only team in the North that looks like they could hang is Syracuse. And while they can turn it on, they can sure turn it off too. So if Springfield wins the phone booth knife fights, clear your calendars for June, T-Brits fans. You're going back to the Calder Cup Finals because if you can win the Atlantic, the North ain't serious. All right, I think that is a good spot to leave it. Let us move on to the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. Sarah, the last time the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins missed the playoffs was the 01-02. Oh, sorry. The last time the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins and the Pittsburgh Penguins missed the playoffs, both of them, was the 01-02 season. So this year's last place finish is unfamiliar territory for the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. What have been the biggest factors keeping the WBS Pens down this year?
So first, yeah, you are right. This is the last and only time that both Pittsburgh and Wilkes-Barre missed the postseason. Wilkes-Barre has only missed the playoffs 3 times ever in franchise history. That nugget came from Patrick Williams in a tweet, so want to credit him because I certainly would not have looked that up. But this is a weird place for the Penguins to be because they are used to having some level of success. Now, one of my bingo card squares, throwing back to earlier this season, was that injuries to Pittsburgh would decimate Wilkes-Barre. That's only been somewhat the case. Calling up Alex Nylander multiple times over the past few weeks isn't what doomed these particular Penguins. Since the trade deadline, Nylander has been called up 5 different times. He's basically been the designated get in your car and drive back and forth player for when they need someone. And most of those have been emergency loans. Drew O'Connor went up on March 4th and now is hurt. So hasn't even been able to play for anyone. Mark Friedman went up in March 18th, just got put back on waivers to go back to the AHL this week. Taylor Fedun up on the 20th, back on the 29th. Philip Hollander up on the 23rd, back the 24th. Dustin Tokarski spent most of February up in the NHL. And then spent about 3 days at the end of March up in the NHL as well. So they're losing guys, but they're not losing guys necessarily for long stretches of time, and they're not losing their top players. Wilkes-Barre Scranton's top players have remained with them really for the most part since the trade deadline. Their top scorer, Valtteri Puistinen, he has 56 points in 70 games. He wasn't called up at all this year to the NHL. Drake Caggiula, he's got 282 NHL games to his credit. This is actually the first time he's ever played in the AHL. He went right from college to the NHL and got stuck in the AHL this year. 51 points in 64 games. He only got 4 NHL games, almost all in October, 1 in March. Hollander, again, 33 points in 43 games, only got 2 NHL games this year. And then their other top scorers, Tyler Sekura, who has 33 points in 69 games on an AHL deal. So he's not getting called up no matter what. So yes, Pittsburgh has had their traditional injury problems. They have had to steal a handful of players from the AHL, but that really hasn't been the problem for this team, except for, I'll say, goaltending, in that Dustin Tokarski has been back and forth to Pittsburgh a whole lot. He, for the large part, kept Wilkes-Barre Scranton in the race earlier in the season. He's a guy who, when we've talked about goaltenders earlier in the year, he was kind of our pick for, you are the reason your team is successful, because he was making it happen for them. Like I said, he was up for most of the month of February. He's back now. He's lost 6 of his last 10 starts and overall has just 2 wins in his last 10 games. In those last 10 games, 6 out of 10 of them, he allowed 3 or more goals. But the Penguins have been out of contention for a while. It's not just this past blob of games that have really sunk them. They would have needed 79 or more points to beat out Hartford, who have secured the final spot in their division. The last time that Wilkes-Barre Scranton was projected to finish with that many points was back in January, and they have been on a downward slide since then. February, the month where the Penguins were largely without Tokarski's services, they played 11 games and only won 2 of them. Now, I don't hate what I've seen from Taylor Gauthier, one of their goaltenders, but at the end of the day, this team wasn't good enough to survive being without their actual starting goaltender. And in games where Tokarski wasn't standing on his head, they weren't good enough to survive those either. So, I wouldn't point to goaltending as the problem necessarily, but it hasn't helped that they have been without their starting goaltender for a long time, and that lately when he has come back, he hasn't necessarily been great. They have had scoring struggles all season long, though, and I think this is really what has killed the Penguins. Special teams have been okay. Net power play is 9th in the league. Net penalty kill is 11th, so that's fine. Their problem is scoring. Their 1.7 even strength goals per game is the lowest in the league. Their even strength shooting percentage is 6.7%, lowest in the league. The interesting thing is that their top scorers, their top goal scorers this year, with the exception of Tyler Sekura, are all at or around their career average for shooting. So much like with the NHL club, where Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang all had legitimately fantastic years and everyone else around them stunk, that is the same thing that is happening here with Wilkes-Barre Scranton. It's the depth really who has been hurting this team's chances. This is a team that isn't getting a lot to the net. Their regulation shots for is 28.84 per game. Not great, not terrible. It's pretty average, honestly, when you look at them in comparison to other teams. And they're not allowing a disproportionate amount of shots against either. It's 29.37 allowed. So again, not great, not terrible. They're getting the puck an okay amount, kind of comparable to other teams like Utica, Iowa, Lehigh Valley. So they're not out there in no man's land like the San Diego Gulls. Sorry, Gulls, but if you look at the chart, here's everyone else. Here's San Diego. Yes, that. Terrifyingly bad. So, it could be worse, but this is a team, Wilkes-Barre Scranton is a team that is just absolutely snake-bitten as a team. In April, they have played 5 games so far this month. At the time of recording, they've lost 4 of them. They've been shut out twice. They had 1 offensive explosion. They had an 8-2 win over Bridgeport that basically appeared to have used up all of their goals. I know that's not really how it works, but that's how it feels spiritually. In March, 13 games, 10 losses. In 7 of those games, they scored 2 or fewer goals. So it doesn't matter if you have Dustin Tokarski, Taylor Gauthier, or the good version of Marc-Andre Fleury in net. If your team's not scoring goals, it doesn't really matter what your goaltender is, who they are, how good they are. There's not going to be a whole lot your goaltender can do for you. So like father, like son, big Penguins, little Penguins, both of them just really struggled with depth and with being able to overcome the shortcomings of a roster that just couldn't get them over the finish.
This graph, I definitely feel like helps explain a lot of what's been going wrong in Wilkes-Barre Scranton. They have not had puck luck at any point, really, relative to normal. And some of that is team talent. Like, the puck is not going to go in when the guys shooting it are not good. But, like, the fact that they haven't been over 100 at a rolling 2-week PDO since January 10th, nobody was going to keep, like, no team could have kept that going. Nobody. Like, if that's the puck luck you're getting, it ain't. There was no other choice. You were always going to lose. So, but yeah, a lot of what you said holds very much true, in my opinion. And yeah, a lot of like Pittsburgh. But hey, Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins fans, you do have at least one thing to look forward to. There's like no chance that Ron Hextall keeps his job, so you'll have somebody new to come in. You know, if I were Fenway Sports and Entertainment, as soon as I finished firing Ron Hextall, I would grab my checkbook, I would drive to Carolina, and I would walk into Carolina Hurricanes assistant GM Eric Tulsky's office, say, "You're the next Penguins GM. Here's a check. Fill out the amount you think is appropriate."
Yeah, go.
And that would
Have
be
fun.
how I would do it, because I didn't mind Hextall right up until like trade deadline moves.
Yeah.
And that was where I'm like, nope.
Yeah, this is not.
This dude
not
has
it.
lost the plot. So, all right. Let's keep it in the AHL, but let's move on. Sarah, where are we going next?
We're going to Rochester. We're looking at the Rochester Americans next. So as you pointed out on Twitter earlier in the week, the Rochester Americans have a negative goal differential at even strength, meaning that they get scored on more at even strength than they score. The Marlies, Senators, and Monsters also all have negative even strength goal differentials. And while negative goal differentials are not a good sign over the course of an AHL season with all the roster movement and shakeup, it probably doesn't loom that large over the Mercs come playoff time, right?
In the words of the unfortunately not immortal Lee Corso, not so fast.
Uh-oh.
First, here's the graph that we're referencing here in case you don't follow me on Twitter, which if you listen to our show, why? I mean, if you just don't want to use Twitter, that actually seems reasonable at this point.
Legit.
They are barely, but still negative. But that poses a problem here. And let's talk about that. The Amerks record as of this recording is 35-34. Losses are losses. I don't care that they got overtime points, 35-34. The Amerks record when scoring at least one power play goal is 22-14, which makes sense. The power play is working. It's scored. That's at least one goal. That'll usually, put you a leg up on most teams. If you manage to put at least one power play goal on the board, it wouldn't surprise me if every team that's not like San Diego had a winning record when they scored a power play goal. Their record without scoring a power play goal, 13-20. So, yeah, again, you would kind of expect teams in general to not have winning records when nights they don't score a power play goal, but that one's kind of bad. Here's where it gets interesting, though. The Amerks record when they get 4 or more power plays, doesn't matter if they score them, they just get at least 4, is 17-13. In games when they get 3 or fewer power plays, they are 18-21. Again, doesn't matter if they score in them, just that they got the opportunity. So what that says to me is the Amerks' chances of winning a hockey game drops precipitously when they aren't at least getting a carpentry teacher's handful of power play chances a game. As a side note, the Amerks also have the 4th best penalty differential in the AHL this season, meaning that only Calgary, Ontario, and Henderson get a better power play to penalty kill ratio than the Amerks. So if you're an Amerks fan blaming the refs, maybe look elsewhere. But given what I just said about how their record with and without power plays, it seems significant. But let's talk about officiating in the AHL here for context, and then we'll bring this back in. As all this is related, just bear with me a little bit. This regular season in the AHL, there have been 7.44 power plays per game. That's not penalties called per game, because if it's an offsetting minor or like a misconduct or something, that doesn't get a team power play. It's basically just a dude going to sit away from his teammates for a little bit. But there have been 3.75 for home teams, 3.69 for away teams. So we see like a tiny pinch of like home bias, but not enough to really matter. In last season's playoffs, you saw 7.39 power plays per game, 3.93 for home, 3.47 for away. Now, you're starting to see that home and away shift a little bit, and that's a little concerning. But the fact that the number of power plays in the playoffs compared to the regular season number is basically the same, that's kind of interesting because we usually think about refs just swallowing their whistles in the playoffs. And then I remembered an article from The Athletic from Cam Charon. I don't know if you saw this, about how there actually are more penalties in the NHL playoffs per game, more power plays given per game than in the regular season. And how he's like, that doesn't feel right. Like, I believe the statistic, but something there is putting its thumb on the scale. And he dove in and looked at where those power plays are coming from in the series. And shocker, as it turns out, in games 1, 2, and 3 in series, power plays are way over regular season average. But as the series goes on, they drop. And you see fewer and fewer power plays given in games 6 and 7, which, if you've ever watched a game 7 in the NHL playoffs, confirms that this is not true. So I did a form of that same analysis because I thought it was weird that the number of power plays given was similar to the regular season than the playoffs. Like, that didn't feel right for me, someone who watches these games. So I looked at elimination games in last season's playoffs, basically in a game in which someone, if they lost, would have been out of the playoffs. And again, normally we're looking at 7.44 power plays per game in the regular season. In last season's playoffs, 7.39 per game. In elimination games, it drops to 7.15. 4 for the home team, 3 for the away team even. Like, that is starting to see those home and away splits get a little precarious. And I went even further and I looked, what about in the last game of a series? Now, there weren't too many of them last season, so I combined the last 3 full playoffs, not the 2021 Pacific nonsense. So 18, 19, and last seasons in just the game that was the final game of the series. So a best of 3 game 3, a best of 5 game 5, a best of 7 game 7. 4.6 power plays per game, 2.64 for the home team, 2 for the away team. That is a massive drop.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a similar pattern to the NHL where it's like, oh yeah, we'll call all the penalties and give power plays in like the early parts of the series. But once it starts getting late, those whistles go away. And I know all of you are just absolutely shocked right now. I can hardly believe that there's evidence that officials put their way of whistles in important playoff games myself. But try and power through the tears. But now we're going to bring that back to the Amherst. The Amherst aren't doing so hot at winning games without at least 3 power play opportunities, at the very least. They're getting outscored 5-on-5 and are 13-20 when they don't score a power play goal, and 18-21 when they don't even get 4 power plays in a game. Those two things paired together is concerning because it says the Amherst are going to have to figure out how to win games without their power play coming through. And remember, Buffalo didn't paper anyone down at the deadline. So the Amherst could be in trouble here because if they can't get power plays, this becomes dicey for them.
I can believe that they didn't paper anyone down, but I can't believe that they didn't do that. One last thought about Rochester here. Do you think that the Sabres send Devin Levi down to Rochester for the playoffs? And if so, if you're coach, do you start him?
So, as I said, the Sabres didn't paper anyone down because you can't paper down Devin Levi. He did not play for you. And this is where I got it wrong last week about Shane Wright not being able to go to Coachella Valley. Like, the rule for players at the trade deadline for the AHL playoffs is they have to be on an NHL roster. If they're not on an NHL roster, that's fantasy land. That the AHL doesn't care. So the fact that he was in the OHL but was on an NHL roster makes it okay. The same with Devin Levi. Devin Levi is eligible to go to Rochester. So if I'm Buffalo, 100%, I send him to the AHL unless there's some outstanding reason not to, injury, or, he's, I don't know, doesn't like garbage plates. Unless there's some actual reason, like, I don't see why they wouldn't. But the second part of that is a absolutely bigger question. Devin Levi is an excellent goalie and a massive goalie nerd. Sidebar here. Case in point, there's a new VR technology for goalies where you can basically get practice reps and make saves and do drills in your living room. It's called Sense Arena. Anyone who wants to Google it, but it's very, very cool and surprisingly affordable. A solid number of college and pro teams use it. Also, Sense Arena, not a sponsor of the show. But they track like everyone who uses the software. They have a login, all of that stuff. And I found out of all of the people in the world that use Sense Arena, and again, it's becoming more and more common. Do you want to guess who the number one user is in the entire world, Sarah?
I mean, I'm going to have to go with Captain appearing in this section of the show, Devin Levi.
Yeah, it is in fact Devin Levi. He is the most active user on Sense Arena in the world. Shout out to Kevin Woodley for that fact. So like this is a dude who very much does everything he can to be the best goaltender humanly possible. But do I start him if he goes to Rochester if I'm Seth Appert? That's not a dunker to me. Like Malcolm Subban and Michael Hauser have been in Rochester the whole time and have done a reasonable job. Like they haven't, lit the world on fire, but they have not done anything that's like, you can't start that guy. Like he's lost the net. Like, do you just let a prospect parachute in and do the like Captain Phillips meme now? The like, look at me, I am the starter now. Like, what does that do to your locker room? Like, to me, I can see a locker room would be like, no, this is our team, and you're just letting this dude jump in and cut in the line. Like, that's not fair to take Malcolm Subban's net away from him or, Michael Hauser's net away from him. They didn't do anything to lose it. And it's not unheard of. It's not unprecedented for a team to have this exact situation happen to them and not start the young, hot goalie prospect. Remember back to last season, Yaro Askarov parachuted into Milwaukee from Russia after his season was over, and he started how many games? 0.
Yeah.
And it was weird at the time, but at the same point, that makes sense too. Of like, Connor Ingram didn't do anything to lose that net. Why are we just handing this guy important starting games? This would be a judgment call for me to start Devin Levi. How do I think my players and most importantly, my goaltenders react? If this is something that I think, talking over with them, like, is this going to go smoothly? How do they feel about it? I might, decide from there. If everyone seems like they're fine with it, I would at least be entertained starting Levi. Should he come into practice, work hard like I would expect him to, and be a professional, then if I feel like he earned a shot, then I would give it to him. Otherwise, I can see a world in which he gets practice reps but stays in a ball cap on the bench or in the press box, and I don't think that's necessarily wrong. Like at some point I do think there's merit to trust in the goalie that got you there, and that hasn't been Devin Levi this season. It probably will be next year, as I think he definitely gets time in Rochester. But I can see a world in which they don't give him the nod right away.
And there's worse guys to have sitting around as your number 3. Like,
yeah. And he very much seems
everything.
to have,
yeah.
like the best attitude possible about everything. So like, if he's not getting starts, I don't think he would be the type to like pout about it and be like a distraction in the locker room. Like, I think he would be in the press box, like, texting the goalies like, hey, like, think about this, or like, I saw this from that. Like, he very much strikes me as someone who would be like a team player, even in the press box. Like, all right, I think that's a good place to leave it, Sarah. Let's move on. Let's talk about Grand Rapids. Way back at the start of the season, the model predicted Grand Rapids would finish the season with 80 points, and we both took the over, expecting that their veteran players and youth would combine to help the Griffins to get back in the playoffs. That isn't what happens for the Griffins this season, who have been holding down last place in the Central, currently with 64 points. How did we and the model get this very, very wrong, Sarah?
Yeah, this isn't just like a little bit wrong. This was a lot wrong. So the key problems for Grand Rapids, as I have seen them, there's a big chunk of their core players have spent a lot of time up with Detroit. Zarnik, Matt Luff, Tara Hirose all veteran players who were impactful for Grand Rapids when they were there, but probably expected more out of them had they not been shuffled back and forth up to the NHL a lot. Good for them, not good for the Griffins. You want those veteran players to be around for the long haul, contributing to your team. Much like we talked about Wilkes-Barre Scranton earlier, Grand Rapids has a very similar problem in that they can't score goals. And you're not going to win games if you don't score goals. They score an average of 1.81 even strength goals per game. That is among the lowest in the league. Their team shooting percentage is low, 7.4%. So it's not the worst in the league, but they're down there around other teams who have struggled this year, like San Jose, Henderson, and Belleville. The special teams, however, are downright horrible. Their net power play, 13.3%, 29th in the league. Net penalty kill, 78.7%, 31st in the league. That's extraordinarily bad. Like, usually if a team has a really good power play and a really bad penalty kill, it kind of evens out. You're like, all right, well, one of them's trash, but we sure are doing good on the other one. No, this is just bad all around. So they're not scoring at even strength. They're not scoring on the power play. They're not keeping pucks out of their net when the other team has the man advantage. I don't know. This is how you end up at the bottom of your division. In terms of goaltending, Alex Nedeljkovic was fine in goal. He obviously wasn't there the whole season. Detroit eventually waved him down. Everyone else was completely forgettable, to the point where I was like, oh yeah, you existed. You lost a lot of games. So like, Nedeljkovic did his best, but the team in front of him, not great. Can't score goals. Much like with Wilkes-Barre, your goaltender could be literally anybody, and if the players in front of him aren't putting the pucks in the other net, he's not going to score you goals. We did a start bench ship on here a while back, where Griffins coach Ben Simon was one of our, like, is he on the hot seat guys? We both said yes, and I can't say that I disagree. The special teams alone should be enough to get someone fired. Your team should not be that bad. And obviously the head coach doesn't have full responsibility for special teams, but things roll uphill, right? And at the end of the day, how many chances is Ben Simon going to get to turn this team around? Because it hasn't happened yet. We are seeing more of the same from a Griffin team that has enough talent on it to not be dead last in the division. This is the second consecutive year that the Griffins are finishing 7th in the Central. In 2020-21, they finished 3rd in a meaningless season. 19-20, they were 3rd before the season was canceled. 17-18 and 18-19, first-round exits. Year before, they won the Calder Cup. So it has been a steadily nose-diving performance from Grand Rapids since they won the Cup that year. 18-19 was Ben Simon's first year as head coach. When I look at Grand Rapids, one of the first questions that kind of comes to mind for me is, does this team have an identity problem? From years of watching them play against the Wolves, they had a very contentious playoff series the year the Wolves won the Cup. They remind me a lot of Iowa in a way, of being very physical to the point of, here's the line, and they're frequently on the wrong side of the line in terms of physicality in games. Very much a mentality of, well, if we can't outscore them, then we can out-hit them. That doesn't bode well for your long-term success. Detroit is a team that is on the way up. Like they are starting to get players in their pipeline who are almost ready to contribute at the NHL level. Do the Detroit Red Wings make the playoffs in the next couple of seasons? That's someone else's job to predict, not mine. But as Detroit gets more talent coming through their pipeline, more players coming out of juniors and college to join the AHL, it makes you wonder, is this the right environment for them? You would think that they're going to want to invest in a better overall environment to prepare their players, have them experience success, and prepare them better to go up to the NHL. This isn't a team where I'm seeing a lot of guys graduate to the NHL who weren't already going to be superstars. Like Mo Seider, he was there for fun. Like he needed the AHL a little bit to just sort of get used to the American game, but like he was going to be an NHL star regardless of how much time he spent in Grand Rapids. The guys who are graduating up to the NHL from Grand Rapids are the guys who you could put them anywhere and they're going to get it there. those kind of like tweener prospects or guys who need this environment to get their feet under them. I just have a lot of questions about what they're doing in Grand Rapids, because this team, I don't think, even looking at the roster on day one of the season, we both thought they'd be better than they are. I don't think we both would have said, oh, they're going to win the cup. But this is not a team that should have been on paper last in the division. And so, if I had to hand out an award to a team where things are most likely to see a shakeup in the offseason, it should be Grand Rapids. The special teams. I just keep like looking back at that figure of like, that is unacceptable.
It's bad.
Yeah.
It is bad. The other thing too is like they've had a lot of prospects that have come through where it's like, I mean, yeah, they graduated, but like,
right.
Is that what you were hoping for from Joe Veleno or
right?
Like Michael Samuelson or like, I feel like the ceiling initially with them felt a lot. I mean, definitely Veleno, but like, I felt like the ceiling for them felt higher when they were initially drafted. And then by the time they got to Detroit, it's like, yeah, that's not gone great. And it's like, is that 100% Ben Simon's fault? No, probably not. But kind of like the special teams, it's like, yeah, but the buck stops somewhere. And when you're the head coach, it stops with you, whether it was your fault or not. You were in charge of managing it to some extent. And this is a second straight, just like, not just bad season, but like embarrassingly bad season from Grand Rapids. And I mean, I think in our preview, and I might be wrong, so, but I remember thinking like the team is talented enough, but man, that goaltending looks not great. And that was our concern. And that went as expected, but like, it felt like that didn't need to drag them down completely.
Right.
Like, yes, goaltending is important and good goaltending will definitely help boost a bad team, but like it is possible to eke into a playoff seed in the AHL's expanded playoff multiverse, with sub-average goaltending. Like Cleveland's is about to give it their damnedest. Tucson definitely has. Like it's definitely possible for them to, look at literally the teams ahead of them in the Central in Chicago and Rockford. Like Rockford's goaltending has not been good at all this season, and yet they're gonna, finish in a playoff seed. Like Manitoba's has been very okay-ish. Like it hasn't been great, but it hasn't been bad. So like it's possible that you can make a playoff spot with sub-average goaltending, but like that whole team just feels like it's I don't know, but I agree. I think this is probably Ben Simon's swan song. At least that's what I would do. The AHL, I think we had a quiz the one time last season where we talked about like, did this coach get fired after like 4 bad seasons? It was like, nope, they stuck him around for another 3. Yeah. So there is a certain level of like weird job safety, whereas like as long as you don't do anything like obviously fireable, like, oh, I don't know, share a pre-scout with other teams, your job security is pretty high.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's a good place to leave it. We are going to take a break here. And after the break, we will get to the Pacific Division entirely. That's all 4 teams left: Abbotsford, Colorado, Calgary, and San Diego. If you're just here for an Eastern Conference team and this is your jumping off point, you don't want to hear about the mythical Pacific Division, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, check us out on social media. We have some fun there. We post some memes. Links to our social media and more can be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. We're going to run some ads, pay some bills. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. We are back from break. I hope you enjoyed those ads that you definitely listened to and didn't just fast forward through. You wouldn't do that to us. That's fine. We get paid all the same. Abbotsford is our next stop. Sarah, Abbotsford is a team that we both, that you and I and the model didn't believe in very much at the start of the year. The model gave Abbotsford an average of 76 points, and we both took the under. Instead, they're 4th in the division with 85 points. How has Abbotsford managed to make us look dumb again?
So this is basically like Bizarro World Grand Rapids, because it's sort of the flip of what we had expected there. Abbotsford is a team that has gotten great performances out of players who we hadn't really expected to get great performances from. I look back at my notes from our season preview episode, and I said about Abbotsford, and I quote, "There sure are some guys on this team," which is a true statement when you look at their roster. This was a collection of players who, like, there's not a ton of elite talent. Like, there's some good stuff there, but there's no one on this team who I'm like, here's my future first line forward. I also didn't know that Jeremy Colleton was going to be the coach to make players be better than the sum of their parts. I liked him when he was in Rockford, but he was also given a fairly stacked team to coach, so it was kind of hard to tell how much was him and how much was the roster he was given. And of course, we all know his stint with the Blackhawks was miserable from start to finish, so it was kind of hard to predict how things were going to go in Abbotsford. I took a look at Abbotsford's top 5 scorers in terms of overall points this year. First up, Christian Wolanin, 55 points. He has crushed his previous record of 31 points, which he set back in his rookie year. Wolanin in particular is a player who I've seen a lot from. He was part of the Kings organization for a couple years, so played both with the Kings and the Reign. I thought he was fine as an NHL depth defenseman and as a top AHL defenseman. You know, if they would have re-signed him, I wouldn't have complained about it. But he certainly has never brought this much offense before in his career at any level. Their next top scorer is Linus Karlsson. He has 48 points. This is his first year in North America after spending his career in Sweden. And it wasn't a career that particularly would have translated out to 48 points in the AHL. Justin Dowling is third. It's not a career high for him. That was 53 points in 62 games way back when he was still with Texas. But it is in his top 5 in terms of overall scoring. And he's shooting at just 8%. That is below his career average, which is at 10.7. He's always been kind of streaky, but he's still underperforming based off of his past seasons. Tristan Nielsen, this is his second year as a professional. He went from 11 points in 41 games last year to 41 points in 62 games this year. Arshdeep Bains, this is his first year professional. He was undrafted out of the WHL, 37 points in 67 games. None of these guys are players who I would have expected to do this at all. Like, at most, maybe Justin Dowling, knowing that he has a history of performing well. He's always been that sort of depth scorer guy you can count on to put in points when you need him to. Everyone else, no. Under no circumstances would I have expected this season from them. In terms of goaltending, Artur Silovs has played the majority of the games. This is the most games he started in his career. And he is putting up pretty good numbers. Journeyman Spencer Martin is also putting up some of the best numbers of his career. In addition, they're overall getting strong defensive performances from the team. Their 27.72 regulation shots against are among the lowest in the league. So they're doing a good job of protecting their goalies no matter who is in net. Their biggest struggle has been special teams, but they're getting the job done at even strength. So it's been working out for them. So the biggest thing that has made Abbotsford successful is all of those guys who I looked at way back in, October, September, whatever, when we did our first episode. And I said, these are sure some guys. Well, they all turned out to be good, which is not something I would have predicted. Wolanin, like I said, I know he's good as a defenseman. I would have predicted him being strong defensively, limiting chances against. Would not have expected him to put up 55 points this year. So for whatever reason, whether it's Jeremy Colleton, whether it's just weirdo Abbotsford magic, this team is getting performances out of guys that us, the model, anyone who has looked at any of these players ever before would not have expected to happen. It's been fun to watch. It'll be interesting to see how far it carries them in the playoffs, particularly knowing they'll be getting at least a couple guys back from Vancouver if they haven't gotten them already. But not what I thought. Not ashamed to say that I was wrong about Abbotsford, but you can't blame me for being wrong based off of what their roster looks like.
I also feel like, too, if my memory serves me correctly, like the second week of the season, they went out and like did some free agent shopping when they realized, I think they got like Kyle Rao, I want to say, came in like the second week of the season. It's like, okay, that changes some things. But yeah, Justin Dowling, I think, was the only one from the like opening night roster where I'm like, I mean, he's going to be an impact player in this team, but like, And I liked Archdeep who I still contend is the name of like a supervillain from like a B Marvel movie. But like, yeah, if you would have told me Christian Wolanin would lead this team in scoring and be like a finalist for best defenseman, I would have, probably laid a heavy wager against that. Like, I would have lost some serious money on that one. Because like he's always been good, but like nobody expected this.
No.
Nobody. Like Christian Wolanin's mother did not expect him to have this season. And
Christian Wolanin didn't expect to have this season. Like,
no. Like, I mean, good for him for, putting in the work and making this big of a difference. But like expecting that was not something I think anyone realistically could have done. So, I mean, Abbotsford's been a fun story this year. But I think that's a good place to leave it. Let us move on. Sarah, where in the West are we headed next?
We're headed to Colorado. We're going to take a look at the Colorado Eagles. Where back on January 25th, the Avalanche and the Sharks did a little bit of business that seemed to help out both teams. Part of that trade was Ryan Merkley, 21st overall pick in 2018. He went to Colorado. He had 14 assists with the Barracuda in 30 games with them. Now at 28 games with the Eagles, he has 2 goals, 6 assists for 8 points. He is graded in the 16th percentile according to the model with a replacement level grade. So the change of scenery theory seems to not be doing so hot for Ryan Merkley. So Sean, what is going on with him?
Sadly, not a whole lot. The same thing that's plagued Merkley his entire pro career is still plaguing him, but this time in a very different way. That's consistency. And we'll come back to that in a minute, but remember that word. I, for one, thought the change of scenery to a team that has a history of developing defensemen would be helpful to Merkley. And you can see that he's made some adjustments to his game. He manages the puck better. He cheats out of the zone a lot less. His defensive zone coverage is just now merely not good instead of being truly horrendous as it was coming out of junior and at several points in his CUDA tenure. But I don't think he's quite worked out yet how to balance his puck management with actually making offense. Coming out of junior, Merkley was viewed as having having potential as an offensive defenseman that was just sky high. Like, you could see the flashes from him where he would do something ridiculous. His highlight reel was just sizzling with passes that like other defensemen just could not make or couldn't see or didn't have the vision or ability to make that play work. The problem was that while he could make plays that only a handful of other guys could see, he also had no regard for risk and would try and spring guys for breakaways or force pucks through traffic that created turnovers, odd man rushes against, the whole bad things. Not to mention his actual defense and effort and a lot of off the ice things that were widely reported were ranged from bad to jeez. In short, the highs were good, but he wasn't consistent. Slowly, and like you saw that with his first season with the Barracuda, like you saw those inconsistencies. You saw like the not great effort, the horrible defensive play, but you saw the flashes too. But you saw maturation slowly but surely. You saw it. Like, yes, he still had defensive lapses that saw our friend Kevin Lacey of Tealtown, USA pull his hair out, but the attitude and effort concerns were melting away. He was starting to gain some risk aversion and puck management skills. But this season for the CUDA, and especially for the Eagles, he struggled with how to put that together. He still has the skill set, and you can still see it in flashes. Look at the last assist for the Eagles against Rockford on Patty's Day. Gets it past the point, sees Ice Hog defender coming towards him at the point, and coverage down low shift. He fakes the shot, freezes the defender, makes an adjustment, and makes a shot pass to Maltsev for a tip in the slot for a goal. All of that processing, execution, vision, half a second with the puck on his stick, and he makes the play. Most guys fire that puck into traffic or into shin pads or make like a rim around down back below the line. But he makes that play, and not a lot of other guys do. but you can see Merkley struggle with the how and when to take risks and when to jump in and when to lead the rush and to make offense. So many times you'll see him beat the first forechecker and start the rush off the ice, rush up the ice out of the defensive zone. He'll gain the neutral zone, and then he'll just kind of like make a dump off pass and slam on the brakes instead of spearheading the rush, gaining the offensive zone and going to do damage. Like, you can see he knows it's risky to carry the puck there and join the rush. So instead of trying to assess whether this particular time is the right one, he's just like abandoning it altogether. And that's where consistency comes back in. He can still make offense, but he looks unsure of if and when he should take those risks. And instead of trying to assess them, he's just kind of abandoning it. He seems to know that he has to do less of it, but hasn't figured out much more than I need to stop doing this as often, which makes him struggle to create offense because that's what he's done his whole playing career, spanning the entire, that's how he's made offense his whole career, is by taking those risks. So him trying to figure that out has been not a great trial and error process from him so far. But like, it is, strange to see that he's basically spanned the entire spectrum of inconsistency, where he went from being inconsistent because he tried to make too much offense and it backfired, to now he's trying to take less risk and now can't consistently create offense. In a sense, it's ironic, but if he can work on that, like understanding when to take the risks, when to do it, because like you can see frustration when he like gets to the center ice line with the puck on his stick and he's just like, oh yeah, and like makes a kick out pass to someone on the wing and they dump it in or whatever, and he like just slams on the brakes. Like, you can see the they don't let me have fun anymore kind of like moment from him. It's not like, I'm glad that he's at least understanding that he can't just, try and skate through everyone or pass through four guys to make a play. But like, he hasn't worked out when it's the right time, like when he needs to get the green light. But should he be able to make that development, which I feel like is not unreasonable? Like, yeah, it's been a process this season, but like, if he can make that jump, he's still got the skills to ball. It's just a matter of finding the right moments to use them. But I think he will be okay, but he is also starting to run out of runway here. And I don't know where that leaves him in the future in the Avs organization, but I still think he's worth investing in as a prospect. But that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and like I with Merkley, when you were talking about kind of the change in his play and now he's like afraid to make a mistake, like when we talked about Colorado earlier in the season, I had shared a quote from their coach talking specifically about working with Alex Galchenyuk, who like I kind of see some similar issues in that, like Galchenyuk is and was like offense, like playing away from the puck. What is that? Defense? What is that? And, Colorado's coaching staff has really worked with him to kind of reshape his game and teach him things that he should have been learning like 15 years ago and just never had to apply. And, I think that they've done a pretty good job. It hasn't necessarily translated to a full-time NHL gig for Galchenyuk, but watching him in the AHL, he is a much more responsible player than I am used to seeing from him. And, if the Avs organization is willing to stick it out with Merkley for a couple of seasons, it'll be interesting to see if they can work the same with him, of teaching him, this is when you can take a risk. This is when you can try to skate through everyone. Here's when you shouldn't do it. I think it'll be interesting to watch progress, because yeah, there's something there, but whether or not he can put all the pieces together will be interesting to see. But before we go and move on to our next team, since the Eagles have clinched a playoff berth, I'm going to ask you the same question that I do every time we talk about a team in this position. So how do you see the Eagles' chances of making a playoff run?
I mean, they have home ice locked up in the first round, which is always important. We talked about, I think it was last episode or the one before that, very recently, that like home ice matters a lot more in the playoffs than it does in the regular season. Some of it, I imagine, is the crowds are bigger, they're louder, maybe even a little drunker. But the like home teams in last season's playoff won like 65-ish% percentage of games. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but the Eagles have that locked up, which is good. It's just now about who their opponent is, which I don't think makes a big difference in how I see them. They'll be sizable favorites over Ontario or Bakersfield, given that neither of them are going to get reinforcements from the NHL immediately. And I think barring any kind of major injury or like surprise roster parachute, they should make it out of the first round without too much difficulty. But the Pacific Division portion of the playoffs feels like a specific Johnny Cash song. It's called God's Gonna Cut You Down. And I'm not going to sing. I will just read the part of the chorus that's relevant here. It goes, you can run on for a long time, but sooner or later, God will cut you down. And the Eagles and the rest of the division can run on through the first round, maybe run on through the second round, but sooner or later, a date with Calgary will happen. And while hockey is full of randomness and weird bounces, it just looks to me like the Pacific Division playoffs are just a waiting game. They're waiting for Calgary to come cut you down. Because while I like the Eagles a lot, I am actually a lot higher on the Eagles, I think, than most people. Like, I think they're the second best team in the Pacific right now. I would take them in a series over Coachella Valley as both teams are currently constructed with Shane Wright in town. But I cannot in good conscience pick them over Calgary or think that they even have a real chance at this. Because, like, I don't think they have the pieces to go toe-to-toe with what Calgary's playoff roster is going to be. Because Matthew Coronato ain't even there yet. And while, like I said, I like the Eagles a lot. I think they should pretty easily get out of the first round. Maybe they get out of the second. But when they run into Calgary, kind of like last year, like, I remember hyping up that Stockton, Colorado matchup as, like, this high-flying, fast, innovative Eagles, like, offensive machine was going to run into a solid defensive team, and we're going to see what happens. And Stockton trucked them. Like, that was, I remember watching the first two games and just being like, what did I just watch? That team, like, kneecapped the Eagles' high-flying offense and looked effortless doing it. And I think they're a better team this year. Like, Chicago beat only lost 4 games on road to the Calder Cup last year. Stockton was 2 of them. This Calgary team is real good. So, like, I think the Eagles can go places, but I think their path, like everyone else in the Pacific, ends in Calgary, which I think is a good place to leave it because next up, we are talking about the Calgary Wranglers. Sarah, they've been one of the top teams all season, and they're not letting the foot off the gas in these final few games. That's despite losing some of their better players to the NHL for some, end-of-season cups of coffee, some debuts, which also gives me the impression that Daryl Sutter is on his last legs because I know Daryl Sutter, would rather, eat a pineapple whole than have to play a 23-year-old more than 8 minutes a night. So, but their top guys are back, and the Wranglers are making a strong case to come out of the West. What is the Wranglers' status as we wrap up this regular season?
Well, so first off, I need to say that I'm potentially going to get to check off another bingo square because Calgary has been my pick to come out of the West, I believe. I think I'm not making that up. And they are pretty much showing me why I said that. Right now, they are in a showdown with Coachella Valley for first overall in the league. You can't forget that Calgary, formerly Stockton, had that league lead swiped out from under them in like literally the last game of the season last year when Chicago just yoinked it from them. And hey, the last team to win first overall in the league sure did go on to win the Calder Cup. The AHL has no such like President's Trophy equivalent superstition curse thing. Here in the AHL, I believe it's fairly frequent that the person who wins the whole league often goes on to win the cup. But Calgary has been one of my favorite teams all season. Like I said, Stockton was good. Calgary has brought back many of the same personnel and then made them better. Makes them very scary. Right now, they have a 97.6% chance to finish first in the division. Again, whoever wins the division is going to win the league. Calgary right now has 104 points. Coachella Valley has 103. Each has 2 games left. Calgary has 2 against Abbotsford on the road. Coachella Valley has 2 against Bakersfield on the road. Per the fancy little game predictor thing in the model, Calgary has the edge in their 2 games. Coachella Valley is looking to be splitting their games against Bakersfield. So who knows? Right now, Calgary has the upper hand. I expect that they will, win out to take first in the league. Calgary has won 9 of their last 10 games. They just lost to Abbotsford in a game where Dustin Wolf didn't play because he was up in the NHL. I can't blame them for losing to Abbotsford because they had none of their actual players in this game. Until they lost to Abbotsford, they had points in 14 consecutive games. And when I saw that, I was like, how did that happen? There's no East Coast bias here. The Western Conference and the Pacific Conference, is my jam. That is, despite covering a Central Division team, I know what's happening in the West. And this was still the quietest 14 game point streak that I have heard of. Calgary is just a buzzsaw right now. Last year when they were Stockton, covering the Wolves, that was the series I was afraid of. I legit did not think the Wolves were going to get out of that series. And the fact that they did is still a year later, wow, they sure did that. And again, they are a better team this year than they were last year. They have also gotten players back from the NHL. Jacob Pelletier, Walker Durer, both just came back from Calgary. Dustin Wolf was up. They gave him a game. Why not? He got his first NHL win in his first NHL game. Nice reward for someone who should be Calgary's goalie of the future. Dustin Wolf was scary last year. He is scary this year in terms of being able to steal games. Calgary's goals against Calgary's goals against total goals against 168 is lowest in the league right now. And Dustin Wolf, it's not just me pumping Dustin Wolf's tires. He is now going to be the first ever AHL goalie to win the Bastion Award, so award for best goaltender, essentially, in back-to-back seasons yet. They haven't announced anything officially yet, but the AHL requires its voters to put their individual award winners on the first ballot All-Star team. So Wolf winning the first team All-Star spot means that he is going to be the winner this season. So again, first ever AHL goalie to win this award in back-to-back seasons. This is a team that, my notes for this segment are very small because I'm just Calgary's just good. Like you said, the buck is going to stop with whoever comes up against them. I don't see a reasonable path out of the Western Conference for teams not named the Calgary Wranglers, because this is hockey. Stupid things happen. We've all seen teams get far in series that didn't deserve it. But I cannot see pretty much anyone from the West being much of competition for them.
I do think and we just talked about how I think that the entire Pacific Division is basically just waiting for its time to come play Calgary and get cut down. I don't think anyone in the Pacific can touch them, including Coachella Valley. Coachella Valley's had a great season. Don't get me wrong, but when Andrew Podorowski went down for the year, that was when I'm this went from being a 2-horse race to a 1-horse race. And credit to them, they fought on and fought well, but they do not have the horses anymore to play with Calgary. And the game in which they could have overtaken them, and Calgary just 3-1. Bye. Thanks for showing up. That's been top to bottom. The team is just good. They have 2 or 3 forwards that if they had played the entire season in the AHL would probably be there in the scoring race at the end. They have Nick DeSimone has stepped up in a big way. Matthew Coronado is going to be, I'm assuming he's coming to the AHL. That would be really silly of them to not send him there. So I'm just assuming that he's going to be there. It feels like he has been Calgary's defenseman of the future for 5 seasons now. And he's 20? Right. But I feel like I've seen his name in prospect watches and stuff like that. And I've never gotten to actually sit and watch him play, but I'm told great things. So he's coming down to this team top to bottom is just loaded for bear, especially with they've been this good, and Jakob Pelletier has been gone since February. Like,
right.
he's an over a point per game player in the AHL and has been up and gone for February. And it's like, you don't even notice. And that was the same last year for Stockton too. Like they lost, not Matthew Phillips, Adam Ruzicka, who stuck with Calgary this season. Or stuck with, he stuck with the Flames.
Yeah, the other Calgary.
Yeah, the other he stuck with the Flames this season. And like last year, he left early in the season. I'm like, I thought for sure. I'm like, well, that's where Stockton stops becoming a contender. And nope. Like Mitch Love and that staff have that team like on all cylinders all the time. Like people are like, I don't think Daryl Sutter comes back next year as the coach of the Flames. And I think that's probably for the best, but like Mitch Love's resume at the professional level is not heavy, but like you can't look at what he's done in the AHL the last 2 years and be like, he at least needs to interview for that job. Like, I don't know if he gets it for sure. Cause like, I know Bruce Boudreau is out there and that's a hard one for you to out interview Bruce Boudreau when he basically just comes in and be like, hey, I'm that guy. Yeah. Like that's a hard one if you're Mitch Love, but at the same point. So like, if I'm him, I understand how they hire Bruce Boudreau over me for the Flames job. Yeah. If it turns out that Sutter's done, which I think he is, but like, this Wranglers team is just good. Like, I think there are some other teams in other divisions that could maybe hang with them. Like, I think Springfield could hang with them. I think Texas and Milwaukee could at least give them a fight, could push them. But like, no, I don't think anyone in the Pacific can put hands on them. Like, maybe Hershey or Providence too. But like, it's the number of teams that I even feel like could do something. Like I'm still taking Calgary to beat those teams, but I think I could be wrong. Like, I don't see how Calgary gets touched on the way to the Western Conference Finals. It's really hard not to look at it that way. And I don't like thinking like that. I don't like making statements like that because I've seen how many times it's like hockey's a dumb sport with random outcomes all the time. But like, man, if a team wanted to make me believe that there was a team of destiny this year, it sure feels like Calgary. And it felt like like I remember when we were covering that series last year between Stockton and Chicago, and we're like, this feels like the Calder Cup Finals. Like even though someone is going to go on and play for like this feels like this was the finals. And Chicago was a team where it's just like these are two teams that feel like they are teams of destiny. Like both of them are stupid good. They're loaded. And the fact that Chicago lost 4 games the entire playoffs, and 2 of them were to Stockton, tells you all you need to know about how good those 2 teams were. Like, and this year there is no Chicago counterweight on the other side. Like, no, this very much feels like a team of destiny. Which makes me all the more sad that like I know Stockton deserved nice things, guys. I'm sorry. I will never not feel sad for them, but like just enjoy it because this is I'm hoping that the Saddle Dome like goes nuts because it has not been a great atmosphere for Wranglers games this year. Like the ones I've watched have been very sparse crowd and all that kind of stuff. I'm hoping for the playoffs that changes because I've seen the Saddle Dome when Calgary's in the playoffs and the place is a zoo. So like I know it's possible. I'm hoping for good things from them. But I think that's a good place to leave it. Let us move on to our last place. Sarah, where are we going?
Well, from the highs of the Calgary Wranglers to the lows of the San Diego Gulls. San Diego season, 2 games left, both on the road in Colorado. These games are meaningless. This season is one that it seems like everyone involved is going to be wanting to drink away its memory like the second the season is over, if they haven't started already. Some pieces have already started to fall. Looking forward, is there hope for San Diego Gulls fans on the horizon?
I mean, it's hard to imagine that it gets worse, right? But yes, I do think there is reason for hope if you are a Gulls fan for next season. To start with, you have some fun incoming prospects. Callie Klang, who's a goaltending prospect who I've been pretty high on for a while. I've I was hoping that like there was a way that he would come to Pittsburgh, just because I felt like, well, we have no goalie of the future, and he certainly would fill that very much needed piece. But I think he's going to probably be the starter next year. If memory serves me correctly, because I didn't write this in the notes, Ollie Eriksson X contract, I believe, is up this year. This is the last year of his contract. If you want to look that up, Sarah, while I talk on. And I could see the Gulls or the Ducks organization deciding to say, nah, we're okay. And it being Kelly Klang and Gage Alexander. I'm assuming that Dostal is going to get a shot in the NHL, one that he is qualified for and 100% deserves. But either way, I think Kelly Klang is part of the Gulls rotation next year, if not the outright starter. Especially too, like the Ducks seem to really not want to trade John Gibson for reasons. I don't get that one either.
Free
but
him.
Yeah. Sarah, is this the last year
Yes.
of OE's contract?
Eriksson Ek is going to be a restricted free agent after this season, so maybe he'll be back, maybe not.
I can see a world in which they don't qualify him.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's been like horrifically bad, but I don't think he has done what they were hoping for and seen. I don't think they've seen from him what they were hoping to, and that they're going to cut bait and go with Klang and Alexander, who I think have performed a little bit better.
Yeah.
But also Owen Zellweger's coming in. I imagine he gets time in San Diego. Sasha Pastyov also should get time in San Diego. Same with Nathan Gaucher, Jackson Lacombe. Like, those guys are all good prospects that will be immediate impact players in my mind. Chase DeLeo and Glenn Gaudin both are returning. They have contracts for next year. I don't think they make the Ducks, but they should probably get, a call up or two. Chase DeLeo being hurt the entire year definitely did not help San Diego, as he is a very big impact player and a leader in the room. So him coming back healthy next year will be a big boost. The big thing here is, as long as the Gulls hire a competent coach, like, this should turn around quickly, but that's not a lock. AHL teams love to screw up that choice all the time. Case in point, AHL teams who made coaching hires that we panned in the offseason, none of them have winning records this year. They're a combined 79 and 131 in the AHL this year. The ones we did like, 3 of those 5 have winning records this year. They're a combined 194 and 150 this season. So we at least seem to do pretty good on is this head coaching hire a smart move in the offseason. Word from NHL insiders is that Matt McIlvaine, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. They don't do name pronunciation things for coaches in Austria, unfortunately. But he's the guy on their radar. Looking over his resume, it's a bit on the light side in the sense of he has not had a lot of professional head coaching experience, but he's done really well with the 2 seasons he has had in Austria. Another name that hasn't been mentioned by anyone that I've seen, but does make sense. And again, I'm not an insider. I have no knowledge that I'm reporting on here. This is just strictly speculation. But Anaheim does have a coaching staff member who has a lot of experience in the AHL as a head coach and in the Pacific Division as a head coach in the AHL. That's Mike Stothers. He is an assistant on Dallas Eakin's staff, but we've seen teams in recent history send an NHL assistant to fill a vacant AHL head coaching job. Ontario did it with Marco Sturm. Lehigh Valley did it with Ian LaPerriere. And yes, Mike Stothers is still battling through stage 3 melanoma, but he's been on the Anaheim bench and has steadfastly said that he is not taking a leave of absence from his coaching duties to battle cancer. So I don't think that has moving to be the Gulls' next head coach off the table. Like, I'm not saying he gets it. I'm not saying he's interested or that's what the Gulls are looking to do, but like, it wouldn't shock me to see that move get made. And while, what I'm saying is that this season was a trash fire from basically the second game of the season onward, but AHL teams can turn around in a single offseason. Look at last year. Lehigh Valley finished 27th in the AHL. They're 12th right now. Am I expecting San Diego to ace this offseason, them to be Calder Cup contenders next year? No, I am not. But a turnaround to a respectable team that makes the playoffs, wins games, like looks competent night in and night out, that's definitely within reach. Not to mention that San Diego has never had trouble attracting free agents because, well, it's San Diego.
It's San Diego.
Like, you mix in some good free agent signings, some good new prospects, a head coaching hire that we all like. And yeah, if you're a Gulls season ticket owner and you've seen the last 2 years and are like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this, I would at least wait until they announce who the coach is. At that point, you probably have a pretty good feel for where the team is heading and where it's going. And we will talk about whoever they hire for that role and let you know, if you're not familiar with it, how we feel. And our record's done pretty well this year for favoring or unfavoring head coaching hires. But I think there is reason to be at least hopeful for next season in San Diego. So I wouldn't throw in the towel yet on those season ticket deposits for next year if you were thinking about that, guys. I doubt many were. The Gulls have one of the strongest and best fan bases in the AHL, and I do not say that lightly. But I think there is reason for optimism going forward for the Gulls, and they're going to get out of a lot of what made this season bad. All right, Sarah, any closing thoughts here before we go to our start bench ship?
I'm good. Good luck, Gulls.
Yeah.
Good luck.
I think it is good for the AHL when the Gulls are good. Like,
yeah.
So I'm definitely, like, I don't root for them per se, but I want to see them have success and be good. I think it's good for the health of the league. Let's go to start bench ship. Sarah, we have 3 start bench ships that I made 10 minutes before we started recording. So let's do this. We are starting off with Calder Cup playoff logos. I could only find 3. So let's start bench ship here. The 2009 logo, the logo they used from 2010 to 2012, and the logo they've used for the last 10 years. Sarah, start bench ship.
All right, we are going to start the current logo, the 2013 to present logo. It's fine. It's clean. You can tell what it's about. It incorporates the league logo. I find nothing offensive about it. Maybe because I've been looking at it for 10 years. It just sort of, I've accepted it. We're benching the 2009 one. It looks very 2009. If you had asked me to describe what I think a sports logo from 2009 looks like, I think it'd be this one. We are shipping 2010 to 2012 largely because it looks like something I could have designed myself. And if you know me, you know that I have basically zero eye for any sort of design whatsoever. So that's bad. Therefore, that logo is bad. Sorry if you listened to the show and you designed it, but it's not great.
I mean, if you listened to the show and designed it, that's very surprising. I would not have thought one of our 5 listeners would be the person that designed the 2010 logo, but I'll whatever. I'll take them wherever we can. I am following a very similar trajectory here. In all honesty, I would ship all of them. Like, there's nothing wrong with the current present logo, which I am starting here, by the way, but like, we need a refresh. We need to do something. It's had a good run. 10 years is a long time for a playoff logo. So like, let's find something new. But I am starting it. It is the best of the 3, but that's mostly just because the other 2 are horrific. I am going to bench the 2010 to 2012, mostly because the 2009 one genuinely is the most 2000s looking thing ever. Like, yeah, the design level for the 2010 one is not great, but the 2009 one looks like it belongs in a bowling alley circa 2004. Like, it is. What I think is the most interesting too is the present one is the only one that has the league's logo on it. Like, did you guys just forget to put your own league's logo on the great move?
They might have, yeah.
Graphic design is my passion. All right, let's move on and let's talk Calder Cup Championship rings. These are the last 3 Calder Cup Championship rings, which feels weird to say because one of them is the 2018 Marlies, then the 2019 Checkers, then the 2022 Wolves. Like, the Wolves one, obviously fresh in our minds. The other 2 feel like they're ancient history at this point. and yet they are the 3 most recent Calder Cup rings. I will go first here. I am starting that Checkers ring. Like, most championship rings now feel like they fall kind of somewhere between the Marlies and the Checkers style of one. But like that little ring of the rubies around it, like that just pops. It looks so good. And that's that I'm jumping all over that. I am benching the Marlies one. I think it's fine, but it very much looks, I don't know. I am not inspired by that. It looks like a championship ring from any team these days. There's not a lot of ingenuity, I think, in that. I would have liked maybe a little more color, something that makes it pop, but I'm not feeling it. The Wolves ring looks like a championship ring from like 20 years ago. Like, I don't know if that was the style they were going for, but it definitely does not look like a Calder Cup championship ring from 2022 or 2020, or like it looks like one from like 1985. Like, it's got some more jewels in it and stuff, but it definitely does not have the same kind of style. I don't think that's necessarily good or bad, but like compared to the other two, it is the least impressive. Sarah?
I am following the same pattern as you are. I am starting the Checkers. I love the like red. Yeah, the red ring around it just gives it that extra pop to it. I just cool overall. The Marlies, similar to you, like it's fine. I don't hate it. If the Checkers one wasn't on there, I'd be starting the Marlies one, unless something else really cool had happened to pop up. It's fine. It looks like a ring that the Toronto Marlies would have, been responsible for. And yeah, I am shipping the Wolves again. Like, it's fine. It feels like it's missing something. It feels like I was like cleaning and going through boxes recently that I hadn't opened since like the last time I moved. And in one of those boxes was my high school class ring, which like at this point, like could vote, I think. Like it could have a car and like be able to rent a car on its own, I think. Almost. But like it just it feels very class ring to me.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. It does.
Yeah, and like championship rings always do to some extent, but this one especially does. I'm also just not a gold jewelry person, so I have deducted a few points for being a colorway that I would not personally wear. One of my friends was like, "Do you get a ring?" Because I was like, "Oh, that's real cute." No, I don't get a Wolves ring for writing like my little dinky articles once a week. That'd be cool. But I know people who work for the team who didn't get one. So like, of course I'm not kidding about it.
Like, are we talking?
Well,
like
former, they don't work there now, but there are people who I would have thought would have gotten one. But
okay, I was about to say, like, I know there are like Kansas City people who work in like the like concessions that got rings for the Super Bowl, and I'm like, that's absurd.
Right.
Like,
it's a Super Bowl.
you
just like, take my
popcorn
money.
you should not be getting a championship ring. But like,
right. No.
I don't know.
I
understand there's budgetary concerns at some point in minor league hockey, but like, if you were part of like the front office staff or something,
right?
Unless you were like,
gotta pay for more fireworks. Got to pay for more fireworks.
I would have thought they would have like classes of rings. So like all the rings look similar, but like some of them have, some cubic zirconium at the end. Like,
right.
I don't think,
slightly less bling.
Yeah. I think that would have been acceptable, but not a ring at all. Jeez. All right. No wonder they're going independent. All right. Last one here. We usually don't do the NHL things, but I've been trying to keep the third of our start bench ship be something different. So let's go NHL cap shenanigans. We have the Tampa Bay $18 million over the cap. Arizona with just the endless parade of guys that retire there. And the current NHL cap shenanigan, Toronto running out goalies on ATOs and PTOs for, I think, 5 straight games at the end of the season because they don't have cap room and the NHL wouldn't let them emergency recall guys. Sarah, start bench ship.
So are we like, what is our definition of start bench ship? Are we starting the most like egregious? Like what is our what the criteria am I working with here? Okay.
Yeah, starting the most egregious to the like this is fine. That's the scale we're going. Good question.
Yeah. Okay. In that case, we are absolutely starting Toronto. They're in a hell of their own making. Like they did this to themselves. Because the whole reason they have had to like keep calling up or keep signing like ATO goalies is because they wanted to sign another prospect and like basically burn the first year of his entry level contract. Like they don't need to be in this position. They just were like, well, we really want this kid. And so they did it, and now they have no money. And oh yeah, Samsonov is like maybe hurt, maybe not, kind of hurt, possibly. Like Matt Murray, I think, is like been disappeared. I don't know. Toronto's problems are all their own fault, and it's going to be really funny when they like have to play a e-bug in the playoffs or something. Like I feel like spiritually I should get a bonus square if this happened. Like if like on my bingo card, like I should just get one, even though it's the wrong Toronto. I just no, this their cap shenanigans are all their own fault, and therefore like this is the most egregious. We are benching Arizona. This one's tough. I could go either way on these. Arizona is like, well, it's a loophole. We're gonna keep using it until you tell us no. Welcome to the team, Marian Hossa, etc. Like Shea Weber, come on down. Like
Chris
the fact
Pronger,
that the fact that like Carey Price isn't an Arizona Coyote yet, like, is honestly kind of shocking. I don't. They have seen a loophole and they are using it, and great, good for them. We're shipping Tampa Bay is like the least egregious, just because it's like, well, them's the rules. That's how it is, and if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but like the league does investigate to see if you are up to shenanigans and saying, oh, oops, someone can't play in the regular season. Like you can't actually hide someone on LTIR. Like it's a fun conspiracy theory, but like, no, like is it a stupid rule? Yeah, kind of, but that's how the rule is. So you can't get mad about it. It's the way the rules are working. And if you don't like the rules, well, there's a like owners, general managers conference thingy every year. Go yell at someone there.
All right, we've been in sync for the first two, and we are about to take some serious breaks. All right, I am starting Arizona.
That's fair.
Like, I think all of this is bad for the league, but I think the like policing of Tampa and Toronto and just letting Arizona basically be a fake NHL team for like. This isn't something that like Arizona did for like a year or two,
right,
or they're doing now because they only have a 5,000 seat arena, and like, okay, sure, I understand not trying to spend money to win games when you can't sell more than 5,000 tickets. Like, that's stupid and a prison of your own making. But at the same point, I at least understand how you got to this point. But like, they've been doing this crap where they've been like buying, LTIR contracts and laundering that for like 10, like Pavel Datsyuk hasn't been in the NHL for a long time. Like, they've been doing this garbage for years, and the NHL is just like, yeah, that's fine. You can get to the cap floor doing this like fake NHL team. And like everyone's just I'm so angry. Like, I can't even form coherent thoughts. But like, it's garbage that they've just been doing this for years, and everyone's like, yeah, that's fine. We don't care that they're basically a money laundering scheme for 31 other NHL GMs. Like, do you have any idea how much trouble other teams are in if Arizona ever becomes a real contender? Like, no one's going to just take their cap dumps for a third round pick. Like, it's gross. I am benching Toronto. Like, this is stupid what Toronto is doing. But at the same point, these games are meaningless to them. They are playing Tampa in the first round and have been on track to do that since like Thanksgiving. So honestly, if I were Toronto, I would make a mockery of the whole process and sign 18 ATOs and just literally play like the University of Toronto hockey team in an NHL game, just as a middle finger to the system. Like,
I'd like that.
Do I understand why they didn't get the emergency call up for Joseph Wall for this game? I do. And I don't blame the NHL for being like, no, you did this to yourself. I'm not going to bail you out. Yeah. But at the same point, the fact that they can just keep doing like ATOs and PTOs and stuff, and like that's stupid, but I at least have some amount of, like, if they did this for the entire season, we have a different story. But like for the last, okay, sure, whatever. I'm shipping Tampa Bay. Like, yeah, I don't think the thing was that they hid Kucherov on LTIR the whole season. Like, he was definitely hurt. It was more of like, man, he's like suddenly, like, he wasn't healthy for game 81 or 82 of the regular season, but game 1 of the playoffs, now we can play. Like, that's the part where it's like, all right, you should have sat him for at least games 1 through 3 of the playoffs, just to at least keep the ruse up. But at the same point, like, the t-shirts, the drunken, like, that is one of my favorite NHL moments in the last 5 years. So I absolutely cannot hold that against them, especially too. It's like, if you're a GM of a team and you're not doing stuff like that, you're bad at your job. Like, flat out. Julian Brisebois exalting every avenue possible to make that team as competitive as possible. And the fact that there are other teams out there just like leaving tools on the table that could help them win, that's on them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm mad at Arizona because they're not doing it to win. Like, they're doing it to literally just get to the very minimum they can be to be called an NHL team. And I think that's disgraceful. So that is my difference here. All right. Sarah, any closing thoughts?
I'm all hail the money laundering of Arizona. And they get, and their reward for all of their years of being a front for whatever is that they get to go to Australia. We are inflicting the Arizona Coyotes on the poor unsuspecting people of Melbourne, Australia in next year's preseason for reasons.
I mean, they'll be comfortable in the desert. That makes sense.
Legit. That's all I got.
It's like, oh yeah, it's you come to Australia and it's blazing hot, and the only difference is the beer tastes weird. Australian beer sucks, by the way, guys. I've been there. It's terrible. I'm pretty sure it's because they can't grow hops. But like, other than that, you know, people have funny accents, and you know,
everything is trying to kill you outside.
Everything is trying to kill you outside. But like, other than that, it's pretty much the same as Arizona. All right, Sarah, take us out.
All right, that is it for this show. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. The Calder Farmstead is a part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other great hockey, sports, and sports entertainment programs, all at www.fullpresscoverage.com. Just click the podcasts drop-down menu in the top right-hand portion of the website and enjoy.
And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon, please rate and review the podcast. If you give us 5 stars somewhere, I will personally drive to your house and high-five you. That is not legally binding, but still. Doing so helps others find the show, and your reviews help us improve it. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at The Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more can be found on our Linktree page, which is linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. So we can make music for you too. Sarah, where can the people find you?
Well, my name is Sarah Avampato. You can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at Right Said Sarah. That's WRITE, said Sarah with an H. You can check out my writing at Full Press Hockey, where I talk about the Ontario Reign, or over at Canes Country, where I talk about the Chicago Wolves. Sean, where can people find you?
I am Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SeanObrien81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien_81. My Instagram is not terribly active, although there is a saved story that is all of the hockey jerseys I currently own. So that's worth seeing, if nothing else, to see the ridiculous amount of money I have spent on hockey jerseys. You can find all of my stats work on Tableau. That's the graph. All of the graphs that you've ever seen on the show somewhere are on my Tableau page at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase, all lowercase, all one word. Thank you for tuning into the show. It is currently 2:27 in the morning. For Sarah Avampato, I am Sean O'Brien. Please get some sleep, and please dump and chase responsibly.